these are just some basics about the Census Bureau, stuff you probably all know, but just to tell you a little bit about what we do and who we are. We're the largest statistical agency in the nation. We collect data about the nation's people and economy, and we conduct over 130 surveys and censuses each year. So we don't just do the census every 10 years. Many of you are probably familiar with the American Community Survey that's conducted on an ongoing basis and which collects characteristics about the nation on an ongoing basis. But there are many other programs that we're involved with as well. So the overarching goal for this census, the final bullet on this page here, is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place. So keep that in mind. So one thing we want to make sure that we talk about with communities and individuals when we're promoting the census is that it's safe to respond to the census. Responses are protected by federal law. Every Census Bureau employee takes an oath when they start working for the Census Bureau, and that oath is binding for life. So when I retire from the Census Bureau, in who knows how many years, I will still be bound by those confidentiality restrictions, and I cannot disclose any personally identifiable information, or I'm subject to up to 5 years in prison or a fine of up to $250,000 or both. So we want to produce statistics. We don't release any personally identifiable information to the public, and that information is also not shared with any other government agency or court. So again, in terms of the messaging that we want to get across to those populations who are less likely to respond, that's going to be a key point to emphasize. All of our systems are encrypted. There's restricted access. Responses are kept private behind firewalls. So we're doing everything we possibly can to keep the data protected. The 2020 census is also, we think, easy in terms of the options that we're offering to the public to respond. So never before have we done a census where we've offered the option of online response. This is the first time. So folks will have the option, and our preference is that people who can and have the ability to will respond online. There will also be an option to respond by phone, which again was not an option last time around or in the past. They can respond on paper, or eventually they will receive a visit from the Census Bureau from a census taker if they don't respond in one of the other ways mentioned. So we're offering as many options as we can to make it as easy as possible for people to respond. Response online and by phone will also be available in 12 non-English languages. I can let you know what those are later. I don't know them off the top of my head. And we will also have other literature in 59 additional, or 59 non-English languages as well, to try to cover those populations and be able to explain to them what we are trying to do. Of course, the census is important. It's mandated by the Constitution. We've been conducting it every 10 years since 1790. The primary purpose of the census is to apportion seats in the U.S. House of Representatives. That is a critical function. It also defines congressional and state legislative districts, school districts, voting precincts, and it determines the annual allocation of over $675 billion in federal funding. So that makes it pretty important for us to make sure that we count every single person. You want to make sure everyone in your community is counted because that means dollars for your services. So the time for action really is now. It might seem early to some people, but it's really not, because there's a lot of planning that takes place. This committee has a lot of work ahead of it. Just planning, getting together, figuring out who's going to focus on what. So I appreciate, again, everyone's time here today. There are many opportunities for organizations, municipalities, individuals to get involved and partner with the census. The two main areas where we need folks where we need your support are in recruiting and, of course, awareness. We will be doing lots of hiring over the next year or so, and it's it's going to be extremely helpful and important for us to get the word out about the jobs that are available. I've been sending messages out. Some of you probably got my email from last night about the partnership specialist positions that are open currently across Massachusetts. There are a number of them. So folks who will be doing the same thing that I'm doing here today, going out and talking to communities, educating local leaders about, and working together to come up with a plan for how to count every single person. So these are some of the positions that we're going to be hiring for over the next year to year plus. We've already hired some recruiting assistants in the area, and they are going to be helping us to promote the jobs coming down the pike. We're going to have census field supervisors across the state helping with the actual field operations. And the vast majority of positions that we'll be hiring for are the enumerators, and they will be the ones who will knock on doors when households don't respond to the online option or by phone or on paper. I've listed the website there, and I also, sorry, I had put some handouts here in front of these seats because I thought they were going to be empty, but I can bring them up to the table for anybody who wants to take some. There's a couple of cards that show the website for our jobs, and there's a pamphlet on complete count committees. Anyhow, so some of the other positions are the partnership specialist positions, which are accessed via the usajobs.gov website. So that's what's coming up in terms of jobs. In terms of how folks help us with partnering with us and helping us with recruiting, you could post a link to the 2020 jobs website on your website. Certainly it's helpful to forward the emails that you get from us to your community members and acquaintances, family members, whoever you think might be interested in the positions that we're offering. Another way to get involved in terms of recruiting and helping us out is to identify locations where computer resources and internet connectivity is available for community members to be able to both apply to jobs if they don't have access at home, or of course also to respond to the census when the time comes. Folks also are hosting census hiring events in their local communities. We've been to numerous job fairs and those kinds of things to promote the positions that we have available. And then inviting staff from the Census Bureau to come and talk to local leaders about the job opportunities. That's another way to help. We do have a big job ahead of us. This is going to be a very challenging census. Working together, it's going to be important that we educate communities on the importance of the census and that you all plan your strategy together. So one of the ways that people are getting involved and helping in terms of partnering with the Census Bureau is by leading or joining a complete count committee. So that's what you're all here today for. Identifying challenges in your community that will present themselves that you anticipate for 2020 in terms of getting a complete count, that it will be important to anticipate what you're going to encounter. It'll be important to identify ahead of time upcoming events where you can share the census message. Identifying locations, again, where there's computer resources for people to be able to respond if they don't have access at home. It's going to be critical to identify the local leaders to serve as trusted voices, and that's probably many of you in this room are the trusted voices for your communities. So in terms of educating the community, hosting local events, again, sharing census messaging through various dissemination methods, gathering feedback from your community to anticipate the challenges and to, understand how you're going to, what kinds of tactics you're going to need to use to overcome them. I hope I'm not going over on time here. Okay. I'm going to actually skip this and get to the heart of the matter here, complete count committees. So a complete count committee is comprised of a broad spectrum of government and community leaders who come together, as you have here today, to raise awareness about the census and to motivate people to respond. These leaders develop and implement an awareness campaign to encourage response based upon their or your knowledge of the local community. Complete count committees operate independently of the Census Bureau while working closely with a local partnership specialist who serves in an advisory capacity. They promote the census through locally based targeted outreach efforts. So local leaders like yourselves and are influencers, and you're the trusted voices in your communities, and so the folks in your community are much more likely to listen to you if you say that the census is important and easy, and that you should fill out your census form, rather than me telling them, giving them that message. So that's why the Complete Count Committee is a concept that we used in the past and that we're continuing to use, but because we know that the folks in this room and across the state who are the on the ground, grassroots type folks are the ones who are going to get the message across and who are going to be trusted when that message is received. So committees can be formed at the state level, they can be formed at the regional level, which is what we have here today, at the municipal level. Community organizations can get together and form a committee onto themselves, and there is sometimes overlap. So I heard a couple of people maybe say that they were involved in other committees in the region, which is great, because then you can pass on ideas from one committee to another. We were in Springfield earlier today talking with some folks there, and so we mentioned, this committee here, and that somebody from the city might want to get involved here in your committee. So, let's see. Any questions so far, or should I just keep going? All right, I'll keep going.
Did you have one question?
Yeah, when you talked about identifying places where community resources would be available, is that, so are those locations where computer resources are basically already available, like a public library, or are they where space could exist and be rented by the Census Bureau to set up computer modules that would allow people to respond to the census?
The first.
Okay.
So local libraries, community organizations that have computer banks, yeah.
Got it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So again, the Census Bureau stands a better chance of achieving a complete and accurate count if we engage the local leaders and the stakeholders who know why the census is important and who know how to reach the members of their community that are more likely to be undercounted. Another aspect of these complete count committees, and I'm not sure if you've thought about this at all yet, Molly and Allison, but some sometimes you'll have a larger committee that will be broken down into subcommittees to focus on different facets of the community. So you might have someone from the immigrant community who can devote their focus to getting the message to those community members. So, you have different neighborhoods within a city, or you have, again, different population groups that you'll want to reach out to. So it might make sense to break the larger group, the larger committee down into subcommittees who can focus their efforts on smaller population groups that you need to reach. And these are just some examples of some of the subcommittee types that have been employed in the past.
And Georgia, I'll just jump in and say, that's a great point, and we certainly did do that in 2010. It's interesting, we actually broke into subgroups based on the parts of the strategy, so we had like a communications group and things like that we kind of focused on different parts of the strategies, but it's an interesting way to think about it too, about populations.
Yeah, and it's essentially whatever makes sense for your, for your geography, for your area. So you can break it down any number of ways, again, by focus in terms of strategy. Like you could have a media group focused on engaging with the media and getting the word out that way. Or you can, and you can have a combination to have another group focused on reaching the foreign-born population. So I'm just going to spend, just a couple more minutes talking about kind of breaking down the work of a complete count committee based on the 2020 census timeline. So on the timeline, the first phase that the Census Bureau is, basically we're in the education phase right now. So we're in the process of educating. We're doing these meetings across the state, meetings with municipalities and different groups, trying to get everybody up to speed in terms of where we are, what the Census Bureau's goals are, and getting on the same page. So the education phase really goes through the end of 2019. And that essentially is, you're developing your mission, your message, you're identifying how you're going to raise awareness within your community. So for the Complete Count Committee, that's the basic, idea for the next year plus, some of the things that you'll be doing. And there's some examples there. Okay. The next phase is there's definitely a little echo here. The next phase is the awareness phase, and that overlaps somewhat with the education phase, but I might have moved something, I don't know.
I think you want to turn it off if you hear you fairly well on this side.
The inputs were
Okay. So in the awareness phase, it's kind of what it says, you're raising awareness throughout the community, and that's taking place really, as we move through 2019. It really heats up in January of 2020. That's when the national media campaign will be in full swing. And that's also when the Complete Count committees and local leaders, community groups want to be pushing the message out to their communities about the census. The census is coming. Get ready. Look for your letter in the mail in mid-March. those kinds of things. And then we have the motivation phase, which takes place primarily from March through May. So in this phase, the Complete Count Committee is motivating the community to respond. You're using a tailored messaging and targeted outreach approach based on the people that you're trying to reach. So again, there's some examples there of what a Complete Count Committee will be doing. And these are just examples, they're not all inclusive between March and it says April, but really it's May of 2020. By the way, I can get you a copy of these slides afterwards, so you don't have to write everything down. After the motivation phase, we move into the reminder phase, which is basically, at this point, everyone has had their chance to self-respond, and now the census takers are going to be out knocking on doors, trying to collect the data from the folks who haven't responded. So at this point, the Complete Count Committee will be encouraging folks to respond when someone knocks on their door. They can still respond online at that point. So if they don't want to give their data to the census taker at the door, then they could still go online and do it. They could still call the telephone center and respond that way as well. But that will be the actions that will be taking place in that time frame. So this is just some examples of activities that a Complete Count Committee or subcommittee engage in. Developing that local advertising campaign for your area, for your community, posting stuff on websites, putting things on social media. We will have lots of messaging that you can copy and paste onto your website and images as well. So we'll have partner, kits available online or tools that you can access to make it really easy for you. But the other thing that we'll probably need lots of help with from these committees is translating materials, and you also might want to tweak the messaging a little bit for the people that you're trying to reach. And so you may have a need to translate some of our materials into languages that we don't have available, what you want to put out. And just in terms of tailoring the message that, so we'll have these kits, but they can be tweaked as well for your community. Throughout the process, as many events as we can be present at, we'd love to be able to attend, so there will be partnership specialists in Western Massachusetts, at least 2 or 3. So those individuals will be here, locally for you to be able to attend events, to promote jobs and or awareness, when it's time to respond to the census. And yeah, so that's all I had. We also, just one final note, have a data dissemination program at the Census Bureau. That's a free resource to the public for, basically it's folks who are experts on how to access the data that we have on our website, which is, there's an immense amount of data, but sometimes people don't know how to get what they need. So these experts, they conduct webinars and workshops, and they can help if you're writing a grant or something. They can show you how to access the data that you need, and it's just something that we, want to provide to communities to help folks be able to actually use the data that we have available. So that's all I had.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.